is a sought-after business strategist, mindset expert, healer, speaker, and author who's helped transform hundreds of lives and businesses across the US and globally. She holds a Master of Science in Human Resource Development and has received extensive training in a broad range of disciplines for personal and organizational health and growth, as one would expect from someone with a human resource background. She loves humans. She's no nonsense in her approach. So she enables CEOs and entrepreneurs to rapidly and effectively clear the biggest mental barriers and challenges, allowing them to focus on growth. Her unique inside-out approach not only supports business owners in building strong internal foundations, but developing a sense of inner security, confidence, and strength that will help them transform their business to faster and easier growth. Welcome to the stage, Renata Mazu. Hello,
Thank
Renata.
you. Thank you. And I'm so happy you still have voice after these 2 days.
Huh?
I'm still happy you still have voice.
Oh yeah,
Still.
for sure, for sure. I don't know. It's funny. I think the content is part of it, right? And the people. But surely, I'm lucky I do. I've been taking vitamin C.
Cool.
Taking vitamin C. So, Renata, I'll ask you the same question that we really been asking every speaker who comes up initially, and that's really just around, okay, like love is this like interesting word, right? We throw it around, we sometimes abuse it, we use it, right? Sometimes we don't understand it. I think Cynthia might argue sometimes we don't fully comprehend it or want to, or maybe we're afraid of. But what does it mean in terms of business? What does it mean in terms of leadership specifically? And how does it play out into the world that we're wanting to have, which is effectively one that is productive and creating meaningful profit, right, as a business owner?
Well, I think someone already mentioned in the previous hours, starting with the self. So I want to give a quick experience from my own life to make things a little more clear. So I was writing an article a few years ago about the love and happiness. And at the time, I was driving my daughter. She was about 7 or 8. Yeah, I was driving her to dance practice. Okay. And we chit chat like usually in the car. And I asked her, what does that love and happiness mean to you? And one of the things I remember to this day, and it's been like 8, 9 years after that, she said, Mommy, how can someone love someone else if they don't love themselves? There's just no way they can do that. There's nothing to give. So that
Hmm.
kind of stuck with me. It is going into the personal life, but we carry ourselves into the business, into the leadership, because it doesn't really matter if we're going looking at the businesses, big corporations, solopreneurs, or at our own home. It's the same leadership that applies everywhere. And if we're not coming with understanding, with acceptance, including self acceptance, with compassion, openness, curiosity, overall love, there's just no way we can accept another person in a meaningful way, in a loving way, because then our programming comes up, our anger comes up, the judgment, self judgment. And we're coming from the space that's not the loving one, that's not from the understanding, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting to me because as you think about this, now I know you've worked some with executives, so I'm going to take a little bit of an executive angle with you for now. So no, as you sort of think about this, right, there's the single organism, me, you, right? And then we get these teams, right? So you're like, oh, I've got the sales team, or I've got the engineering team, right? And it's interesting to me how when you love yourself and then you now become the head of, let's just say a group of, it could be small, a group of 5 people at work. You are now the head of another organization, an organism
Mhm.
that is 5 people deep, and that's the same rules apply, right? What is the truth? Am I going to love the truth about our team? Am I going to deal with the truth in our team? Am I going to encourage the best in our team? It's kind of, it's like a reflection in a mirror, right? If you haven't done the work yourself, how can you do the work in your business? How can you deal with the truth in your business if you can't deal with the truth in your own pocketbook, right?
Yeah, I mean, it all is like so intertwined that we cannot even separate anything because we always gonna be passing the opinion, the point of view through our own lens and what's in that lens. Rarely ever will look at it, or I should say, few people do that. So yeah, it starts with us, and there's just no way around that. We can ignore it, we can push it down, we can pretend it doesn't exist, but really, I mean, it's down there somewhere.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely down there. And it's interesting to me because I think in corporate structures we kind of get away with being lazy. I think that in corporate structures, sometimes you can be like, I just do this function, I exist in this ecosystem. Someone else is making sure we make sales. Someone else is making sure the payroll's paid, right? HR
Mhm.
is making sure this piece, engineering's doing this piece, sales. So you kind of develop sort of a like, well, I can be a little bit messy in my own life, right?
You know
Because things
why?
are messy here. Yeah, why?
Because no one can see that.
Hmm.
Because what I care most about, like, it's not how people present themselves. And I heard a little bit of Casey's speech. I mean, I totally agree, the first impressions and stuff, but no one's talking about what's happening behind the closed doors. And we are looking at ourselves behind the closed doors. What is that perception of you? What is in your mind? What is going on emotionally? Because that's going to be reflecting on the same team. If we have stressors, if we are stressed, if we are anxious, we're going to put everything onto other people. And we're human beings, you know really well that we feel each other.
Yeah,
So,
we do. And we don't want that to be known, right? So the reality is if you're a solopreneur and you're dealing with your clients, or you're a team leader, or just a professional that's not responsible for anything more than doing your job, or you're the CEO, it's hard to find space in your work life to find vulnerability enough to admit that it's not going well, right? It can be hard to find that space of safety. And that's why someone like you comes in.
yeah,
Um,
there's a lot of truth in the space in the safety that you mentioned because we're always afraid of judgment. Okay, what's going to happen if I say something, if I open up, if I share something? If we have certain insecurities or certain process stuff down below, it's like it's gonna be like really scary because we're gonna be in a constant alert mode and looking for that threat to come in. Okay, if I say this, something's gonna happen. Some threat that is perceived is gonna come into my life. And
it's
that,
interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, speaking to you as an HR, former HR
See, my
exec.
HR was a little different. It's not like that
Okay.
HRM, like payroll and stuff. I was more in org development.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's the one that's dangerous. And
Okay.
here's what I mean, right? So you're the person, me, if I'm said employee, right inside the company, you're probably one of the people who was most afraid of being vulnerable in front of, right? Because at least in my mind as an employee, right? I would be like, wow, that person's going to shape the org. They're going to help influence and decide, do I get to do that role? Do I get to do this piece, right? And so sometimes I always thought of HR as like sometimes they're safe, but sometimes they get to know everything. And then they become unsafe because you could limit me from a job or limit me from the next thing I want. Um, and so it's kind of an interesting environment, right? Do I know my HR is safe or not? And I think that's one of the safety issues that we have in the workplace is like, can I really be vulnerable enough to tell you what a mess my children are? Well, if their children are a mess, are they a mess? Right? I don't know if you had that challenge when you were in those roles with individuals, or how would you approach that?
That was a long time ago, but I was not actually dealing because my job, I was consulting the state government agencies, and my job was basically to look at the processes they have, if the
Okay.
right people are in the right places, and how do we need to structure organization to make more revenue to retain people. So I didn't want that job that you're describing.
Well, it's a real challenge as you think about, I call it taking the masks off, right? So when you're in, right, and even as the manager of maybe a team of five people, right, you really have to develop a culture where mask taking off is okay, right? Where everyone gets to be vulnerable enough and you're still being professional. Um, Tell me a little bit about what you create in your work and where your real passions are with helping business leaders.
See, the thing is, my work is kind of twofolded. It's basically a blend of the business strategy. So I'm working with entrepreneurs to help them not just grow their businesses, but also I'm looking at the inner transformation. So we're tackling the business as a person, if you will. So we build the foundation so that person is able to run the business and make it profitable. Because strategy, it's not really such a big deal. And nowadays, there's Google, there's YouTube. You can actually find that strategy or strategies and try things. But what's trickiest is to see how we are in our own way, how we're prohibiting that success or growth of our own business. Because we don't realize that we're run by patterns, whether it's thinking, emotional behavior patterns. And oftentimes the biggest mistakes I see when people are working in the business environment, especially the solos, is they start shifting their behaviors. They start changing how they do things and what they do. That might be working for a little bit, but long term, what I've been seeing over and over again, the internal patterns are going to bring them back to the ground zero, to the place they started with. Because if we look at the how we created, in a sense, we start observing from the childhood everything and everyone around us. So we create patterns, we create belief systems. And then based on that foundation that we have, we start behaving. So if we basically behaviors are created last. So if we're looking at changing behaviors and we start changing behaviors, that foundation is still shaky. So we're basically building the house on the sometimes rotten foundation. So what's going to happen with the house? It's going to probably collapse. So I'm just working with the foundational stuff first, whether it's entrepreneur or someone who comes to me to work on the personal stuff. And we'll make sure that those patterns are in place and the patterns that we want them to be as such. And then we'll look into the strategies and see, okay, how's that aligning with where I want to go? 'Cause believe it or not, but a lot of people have no idea what they want. And I don't know if you agree with that. Have you noticed any people there who don't know what they
Oh
want?
yeah, no, people don't often know what they want. They don't have a clear vision. I think that's the number one sort of challenge is people really don't know what they want, and that leaves them sort of in this mamby-pamby sort of like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. And then in uncommitted world, someone else takes advantage of the decision, right? So,
Yeah,
in
the thing
uncommitted,
is, they think they know. I oftentimes hear, like, when I sit down with someone, whether it's just a coffee chat or just a strategy conversation, it's like, okay, what do you want to create? And they're like, oh, $1 million. I want $5 million. I'm like, great. What does that mean? They're like, oh, I don't know. So it's like looking at every aspect of our life and purely identifying, okay, what would that dream state would be? What does that feel? What does that look like? That's
it's so
the missing
interesting.
pieces.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's so interesting because I wanted to step back a second and ask those who are participating, do you feel like you are strategic with your business as you could be? It's a yes or no answer, kind of high level. Are you strategic around growth and building impact as you could be? And sometimes it's not knowing what you don't know, right? I actually think that this is one of the things I see in a lot of leaders is that there's sort of like there's so much more in terms of strategy that's available to business leaders but it's often having the space to really like lay down all your cards and go, here's where I'm at and here's what I'm doing, to be able to then take them to the next, right? It's almost like you have to go through the next instantiation of, should I be looking at a new channel? Should I be collaborating with a new partner? Should I be looking at operations? I'm looking at her, Janet, in the back. Should I be really looking at retooling operations? Do I need mindset? Right? Do I need to relook at my brand and where I'm hitting my clients? It's just interesting to me how much opportunity there is to think about strategy from your business. You're right. You can go online. I think you made the comment. You can go online and you
Mhm.
can search this, but it's so different when it's just your business specifically, right? And people really getting in and brainstorm. I get really excited about that. That's what I do, is brainstorming with people around the actual strategy of their business. And I'm curious how with mindset, when you're working with your clients, how is it that you tie in then the strategic piece to what you're working through with them?
See, my work is a little different than most coaches because I'm really good at look at seeing things that other people miss or don't see. I'm intuitive. So for me, like when someone comes in and like, okay, I want to build the business and I was working or still working with that and that coach. And that coach told me to create a coaching program and do X, Y, Z. And I'm like, let's look inside and see what's really going on there. Because for me, I had a specific example of this when there was another coach working on another piece on that business. And they literally said, create the program. And I'm like, okay, we're not there yet. It doesn't feel aligned. So for me, I'm looking for alignment, not just throwing spaghetti on the wall and just because I know this strategy or I know how to create programs, I know how to create courses, I'm going to create one. And it's not always the answer because if we're coming through resistance, if we're coming through fear, nothing wrong there technically, but we're going to be presenting ourselves differently. We're going to be using different words. We're going to be showing up differently. And it's not necessarily in a good way, but we may be contradicting what we're really meant to do here. So my job is to make sure that there is alignment between where a person wants to be at the end of the day, or a year or 10 years, and what's the most aligned way to get there. And it could be so many ways. And sometimes, and actually, I should say oftentimes, it's just the small tweaks that matter that shift the direction and the angle of the business.
Yeah, that's you said the small tweaks that matter, right? So
Mhm.
what is your common what's a common reason that people find not to invest that you think
Their own
is
fears,
yeah.
not seeing the actual value. So it's a job for you and anyone else working like in their business is like, okay, to show what's in it for them. Because we all the time list, okay, you're gonna have these calls, or this and that. But if a person is already coming with fear and the notion, oh, it's not gonna work for me, it's not gonna work because that's the projection we're already paving the path. So the fear is the biggest one. If there is a desire, and I always say your desire has to like, but you have to put the fire under your butt to just start moving, because otherwise it's not gonna move. You can be productive for a week, 2 weeks, a month, but if your patterns take over, and we all are driven by patterns, they're gonna be taking over sooner or later. You may be okay and more successful for a year or two. It's going to bring it down. And I had the same patterns to walk through. And I did not realize years ago that I had those patterns. So these are the most important things to look into, to become aware, to see what's really going on. Go to the basics. Look at your life, look at yourself. Okay, what do I like? What do I love? What I hate, what I dislike, what I keep doing over and over again. And just go backwards, see where it's coming from, why it's coming, and neutralize and eliminate them. So
So interesting. This like I'm like, I wonder if there must be studies done on like when this awakening of to self, right? We call it self-awareness, right? I used to
Mhm.
think of it like when did I start seeing myself as the actor in the play, right? Almost like you take call it the God view, right? Where you'd be like, look at you, Renata, look at you, Helmut. What are you doing? Why did you make that decision, right? Um, it's interesting to me because you really have to hone in this sense to see yourself and almost start to take yourself apart in the third person. Um,
You
is there,
gotta take a step back and just look at yourself in zero judgment and
yeah,
just see, okay, what is going on that I don't like? What I want to change? Why do I want to change? What's going to happen if I don't change? Because we need that contrast. Because sometimes we're so stuck on that goal and where we want to be just because someone else has it. Because someone else has those 5 million, someone else does, and look at their life.
yeah, yeah, you're right.
We rarely look at ourselves, and I'm so happy to see more and more people actually started doing this, but look in the mirror. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, no, but it's true. We oftentimes, I mean, come on, like how many of us, even everyone on this call, probably, if you relate to like at one point you're just living out what someone else said you should do. Right? There's like the story in your head of, oh, this is what an average life looks like or a typical life. So I'm going to go down the path of doing what I'm supposed to
Mhm.
do. And
Yep.
then you wake up at some point and go, whoa, wait, what? How did I get here? Am I playing a path that someone else gave me, a storyline that someone else gave me, right?
And hopefully that happens sooner than later. Because
Right?
it doesn't happen at all. Right? We are like so far down the road that are like, oh, we spent 20 years. We spent like 5 years at school. We did masters. We did doctorates. We did
Yeah,
so and so. How can I now change to total different path? I spent so much time. I so much invested in this. So we kind of beat ourselves down. It's just like, okay, I don't care. Then the love comes in. Because I always say, okay, so you're saying it's not okay for you to go that different route, though you really want and really passionate about. So I'm like, okay, so does that mean that you don't really love yourself and saying no to yourself? Because that's what it translates to. That's where
yeah.
the love comes in.
It's so interesting, because I hear that and I think immediately about the fact that it's never too late for anyone. It's sort of like the thought I had that came to my mind. Here's what I mean by
Mhm.
that. I feel like, actually, I'm a good example of this myself. I think about, at 33, I came out of the closet, right? After having a
Mhm.
very dedicated life towards God and family and believing that being gay wasn't good. And now here I am, right, at 48, so 15 years after. And I go, wow, only because I took the first stage am I so informed and capable of doing what I'm doing now at this present moment. So it's really not about, it's not something for anyone to think about, is it too late for me to shift or change? It's really just about, wait, it's a perfect time. It's always a perfect time because maybe it's exactly what you went through that will inform the strength of your path forward. Is kind of
Mhm.
yeah,
I
perspective.
absolutely agree. The only thing is, and look, I'm always playing a devil's advocate here. The only
Yeah.
thing is if the person doesn't see that,
Mm,
we cannot do anything. And I remember a while back I was on radio station interview and someone asked, okay, how can we help those who don't see that they can change? I'm like, we can't. We just can't. I mean, the only thing we can do is be present, share whatever we have, share our own truth, and hopefully one day, whenever they're ready, or whenever they hit that rock bottom that opens them up, maybe they're going to be curious about, oh, maybe I want to check that book. Maybe I want to see that. Maybe I want to do that. We can't make others do anything. We cannot make, oftentimes, ourselves do something, right?
right. I think it's interesting to me. So I will say it's kind of like back to they can remember how you made them feel. right? And
Hmm.
I do think that from that perspective, we get to connect with people, we get to love on them, and we get to show them that there is a way, and then let them go. To your point, and they'll wake up when they wake up to maybe the possibility,
Yeah,
right?
we sometimes make mistakes as well in terms of, okay, we try to make another person see our own truth, but we
Mm,
oftentimes
mhm.
forget that they did not live our lives. They did not have our experiences. They did not see these things we did, and vice versa. We have no idea what they went through.
Right. It's like you
From
want
the,
them to see
yeah,
their truth, their own truth,
yeah, because
right?
from the outside, everyone's life is so beautiful and great. Guess what? It's not always the case. Once again, we don't know what's going on behind the closed doors. So before we judge, before we push ourselves, I mean, others to accept our opinions and truth, I always like look, and I haven't done that for my whole life, but I finally learned to do that. To look, okay, why they're behaving the way they do. Because there will be something we don't agree with, there will be something we don't like other people do, and that's okay. But I always look, okay, why they do these things, what they should have come through or like experienced to do these. So,
Be like a roadmap. No, I agree. What is it that you're giving our listeners today?
okay, so it is I call it a mini course, the Miracle Activator, because we want miracles in our lives. Okay. And this is in an ebook PDF format, but I'm explaining super simply the 4 steps, how we can unpack that mental baggage from awareness, the existing patterns, what's going on in our ex right now in our lives to getting more clarity and vision, like what would I love to see in my life? What are the goals and the visions to how we can find the root cause, how we can understand where things are coming from, and how we can actually neutralize those. Because the moment we neutralize the root cause, and I'm talking about the emotional charge here, things start shifting in in our own life. I cannot even speak. And then whenever things start shifting in our lives, we will notice other people shifting. People are not really talking about that. So, and in that book, there is, I think, the way to schedule a call with me. So if anyone wants to look into their own life and say, okay, where am I holding back? What's blocking me? I'll be happy to chat and just identify what's going on.
All right. Well, thank you, Renata, so much. Thank you for the gift. I think that sounds like something that's actually rather pragmatic to kind of work through for anyone who's interested. And then the time that you're offering is wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm all for like healing and just let's move forward.